Hey everybody, this is Matthew Soltesiak and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast. Using my sportscasting background, I speak with a variety of guests and interview key players to gain more insight on what makes this team go. As the Detroit Lions enter a new gritty era, we'll look beyond just the kneecaps when it comes to the analysis. Welcome to another episode. In this episode, we take a look back at the Detroit Lions' Week 5 victory against the Carolina Panthers. We discuss the Lions' 42-24 victory. We'll touch on what went well, any turning points in the game, concerns or takeaways, and any major storylines. Let's get to it, Lions fans.
Hi, everyone. This is Herman Moore, and you're listening to Not the Same Old Lions podcast.
I'm joined today by James Cook, senior sports writer for the Traverse City Record Eagle. You can also hear him on the Get Around podcast. It drops on Mondays. As always, great to have you here, James.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
And as we get into it, just a reminder to the listeners, please hit that subscribe and like button. It is helping us build momentum. And here we are, James. We're not the only ones building momentum. The Detroit Lions are. That's 3 victories in a row.
Yeah, and an impressive one today. I mean, they just took control of that game, which is what they should have done last year when they played Carolina. But they did it this time, one season delayed.
Exactly, and that's exactly what they needed to do, is take care of business the way we all hoped and thought they could and would and should, and something that we haven't always seen out of Lions teams in the past. So let's get to it. It's getting pretty late here. I just got back from the game. This weekend was Pulaski Days in Grand Rapids. I was out there eating some good Polish food, celebrating my heritage. I mean, with a last name like Soltesiak, I think you pretty much know what I'm doing on Pulaski Days. And it was great celebrating down there and then heading over to Detroit for the game. So let's talk about what we liked about this game. I think the very beginning, the opening drive, I mean, Carolina won the coin toss and they decided to receive, and that's not the common thing to do anymore in the NFL, but they did it anyway. We made them punt. Then we had an opening drive of 3 plays, a 20-some yard pass, I believe, to Khalif Raymond, and then one to Marvin Jones, and then a David Montgomery 42-yard touchdown run.
Yeah, and that was like I said, that was good to see them just get out to a good start. You know, I think it took a lot of. It was very relieving to the fans, you know, who were nervous about this game after last year, and with the expectations that this was maybe a trap game, all that kind of stuff, and to get a stop on their first possession and then just go right down and score and take control of that game right away was something good to see.
There was never a time in that game that I ever felt uncomfortable, and I think the defense was a good reason for that. I mean, Hutchinson comes up with an interception, Jacobs does too. Harris recovers a fumble. I think McNeil may have been the one that forced it, but that we won the turnover battle 3-0.
Yeah, the interception by Hutchinson was insane. A one-handed grab where he cuts in front of the tight end on what was supposed to be kind of like a slip screen, and that was just crazy. He's supposedly the first player in NFL history to have first defensive lineman to have 4 interceptions in his first 25 games. Since and the stat I saw was at least 1940, which means they don't have the numbers from before then. So it could be the only one.
That is darn impressive numbers. I mean, he seems to be rewriting potential record books. I heard he's like 1.5 sacks away from the Lions franchise record for most sacks in the first 2 seasons by a player. I have not yet seen the replay on television of that play. They showed it in the stadium. And let me just tell you, that was about as crazy as it was a year ago when we played the Packers and Hutchinson had that interception at the goal line and we were just going crazy.
Mm-hmm. And it was a one-handed grab where he kind of got one paw on it, kind of tapped it to himself, brought it in. It was just a great interception by him, and puts him back in the lead for interceptions with Sauce Gardner.
You gotta love it. You gotta love it, man. He's not yielding to anybody, man. That is an amazing play, amazing player, and I'm so glad he's on our team. I did get a little nervous though after that interception. The way he got tackled, that was a hard hit. I saw it as it happened, obviously, like everybody did, and I just was like, "Ooh, that I didn't like the way the hit went." But I guess that's all fair in an interception return. But man, if that was a little bit lower, man, Hutchinson could have been in a lot worse shape.
Yeah, he got lucky there and escaped one. And then later in the game, you had the Panthers offensive lineman go down with a neck injury and had to be taken to the hospital. But they say that he has movement in all of his extremities and was alert and awake and everything. So
Yeah,
luckily,
that
Sanders Zavala avoided serious injury there. He was a guy in the pre-draft process that I wanted the Lions to get, like in the middle rounds, to get some guard depth, but they weren't able to get him.
Yeah, I was really happy to hear that news, the positive signs coming out of that, because it got quiet. You saw the whole team for Carolina on the field, a number of the Lions players out on the field as well as they stopped play. And then, if my memory serves me correct, it was exactly one play later that Emmanuel Mosley went down on the Carolina sideline, I believe it was, and or their side of the field, and it took a while for him to get up. Lions are apparently getting an MRI on him on Monday afternoon, and they'll know more at that point. But he did not return to the game. So those were a couple of the major injuries out of the game.
I guess the other injury that the Lions had during the game was Jonah Jackson, who was seen after the game wearing a walking boot. But that could also just be a precautionary thing, kind of like it was with Taylor Decker. But Decker ended up missing the game after that.
I did not know about the Jonah Jackson thing. Thank you for throwing that in there. That's good to know. Hopefully, it is something minor and precautionary, like you said.
Yeah, and I think that I didn't know seeing that he played today or a lot or anything like that, but Vitae was not on the inactive list, and he's not
No, he
injured reserve.
wasn't.
So he was active, but I didn't see him play. So they must have felt confident enough that if somebody got hurt, they could put him in, that he's healthy. So he should be back next week and starting. So if they do lose Jackson for maybe a week or so, they have Vitae to put in there and move Glasgow back over to left guard. So
Another thing that was great today for most of the game, I thought, was the coaching and the play calling. The Lions stayed aggressive with what they did. They were not afraid to punt, though, either, if they thought the situation called for it. They were 1 for 2 on fourth down. And then the two plays that just stick out like crazy was the reverse flea flicker, where it's a handoff to David Montgomery, who then pitches to Khalif Raymond, pitches it back to Goff, and Sam Laporta's wide open for a touchdown. And the other crazy one was the direct snap through Jared Goff's legs to David Montgomery. I think that was on a 3rd and 6 play, and that yielded them a first down. The creativity and the play calling in this team is just amazing.
yeah, the flea flicker was just sweet. With the double motion on it, the two handoffs. So you get the defense going one way, and then you get them trying to turn around and go the other way, and then suddenly it's going back the original way, and that defense was just completely turned around. Laporta sold that he was going to block, and then took off, and he was wide open. So this is the second time they've used a trick play to scheme Sam Laporta wide open for a touchdown this season already. And then he had another one after that too, just a regular receiving touchdown.
A
and
play with no trickeration, yet had the same result.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and that touchdown on that reverse flea flicker happened on the side of the field that I was on, and just you saw it unraveling or developing, and the crowd was getting that much more excited, and we all just went crazy when that happened. What else stood out for you on the offensive side of the ball?
Well, I mean, for not having Amon-Ra St. Brown, they still moved the ball well and passed the ball well. Josh Reynolds really stepped up, had a big game. Caught a couple of really big passes, that big toe tap touchdown in the back of the end zone, a couple other fairly decent, deep passes. And so the offense wasn't as crippled as I thought it might be by the loss of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jameson Williams played a little bit, had a nice block on that Montgomery touchdown run. So as we noted, he's a good and willing blocker. Had a bad drop, but later caught a pretty nice pass as well.
Yeah, the receiving core actually did do a great job. You brought up a great point, because They spread the ball around quite a bit. I mean, Jared Goff was 20 of 28 with 236 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also had a rushing touchdown, and his passer rating was like 132 in this game. And I know the 236 yards don't jump off the map to you, but a couple things on that. One, he had 8 incompletions, but at least 3 of those were solid drops, probably 4 or 5. He was pretty on target most of the day. It was nice to see him end that interception streak that he had going. But also, you don't have to throw for 350 or 400 yards when you have a decent running game going, which is really nice to see the balanced effort on the offense. I really liked seeing Craig Reynolds get some carries in there along with David Montgomery, especially in the fourth quarter, so that Montgomery's load got light. And I thought that was pretty important too.
Yeah, Evan Montgomery run for 109 and a touchdown. I mean, averaging well over 5 yards a carry. Reynolds was over 7 yards a carry. So that was just really impressive to see them continue to run the ball effectively and well. And like you said, they spread the ball around. Brock Wright and Samuel Porta each caught 3 passes. Khalif Raymond 3, Marvin Jones 2, David Montgomery 2, Zonovan Knight got 1, Jameson Williams 2, and then Josh Reynolds led him with 4 catches for 76 yards and a TD.
Yeah, I love that balanced effort, the contribution from so many different players. And that was amazing for the offense to just kind of almost felt like they could almost do what they wanted when they wanted in this game. And part of that was set up by the great play by the defense in this game. I mean, this is the game that we remember from last year in the second half where the defense didn't seem like they could do anything right. We talked about Aiden Hutchinson. He had that interception. He had a sack. He had 2 tackles for a loss. But we got to give a shout out to Alex Anzalone. He had 8 solo tackles. Benito Jones and Romeo Okwara in with quarterback hits. The defense only gave up 99 yards rushing, which might be on the higher end for this year, but a lot less than that. It was like 320 last year, something like that. And let me tell you here, James, before we talk about it, Coach Campbell shared how much he liked this as well.
Okay, there's nothing better than when you tell your team just concerns and you talk about it, and your team tells you, Coach, just freaking relax. All right, we got it. And they did that today. They came out, they set the tone for the game, and really never let off the gas. And you talk about complimentary football. We've been talking about it was time for us to get a knockout, a strip, fumble that we got. We talked about our D-line coming up with 1. Hutch got 1. Come away with 3 takeaways and turn those into 21 points offensively. That's complimentary football. So just an outstanding job by those players who, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, they don't care who we play. It's competition, and they show up. And so they're not worried about the elements, who they have, who we have, what the records are, and I'm proud of the way we showed up.
So, again, it was so great to see those contributions from so many areas, especially the defense. What were some of your final takeaways on the defensive side?
There were some things that worried me. The Panthers are not a great offensive team and have not been great this season, and they were able to move the ball at times. Obviously, part of that is that the Lions got a little conservative after getting a big lead, and they weren't doing anything exotic or fancy or anything, but they were able to move the ball. Adam Thielen catching 11 passes. I didn't think that would happen.
No, I don't think anybody did.
13 targets. I know he's kind of turned into their number one target this season. But they pretty well bottled up. DJ Chark, Jonathan Mingo, their rookie wide receiver, looked pretty solid. And then nobody else really did a whole lot else in the receiving game. Miles Sanders had a good average, of rushing attempts, but he fumbled, and then they pretty much kind of went away from him a bit and went to Chuba Hubbard more, even though Hubbard averaged under 4 yards a carry. They gave him more carries than Miles Sanders, which was a bit surprising.
Well, then let's turn our attention to maybe anything we didn't like or any concern we had. I know we won the game 42-24, so you can argue we're being really picky here, but there's always room for improvement. And I guess I'm going to go on that first series of the second half. That's the thing. That's been the Achilles for the Lions, not coming out strong to start the third quarter. Well, they ate up 6 minutes of the clock on that first drive, but they didn't get any points. Goff took a sack, knocked them out of field goal range. It seemed like maybe they were running a little too much, maybe getting conservative early, which you kind of brought that up as well. But you know what? It was a scoreless third quarter by us, but also by Carolina. So maybe that's kind of a draw.
Like you said, they were up big at the time. They had shown that they could move the ball pretty easily and consistently. So I don't think that they were worried about necessarily losing the game at that point, because they figured, if we need to score again, we can score again, and they did a couple more times. Um, but yeah, I think the defense did ease up a little bit. My biggest concern was that Jamison Williams didn't do anything other than that one block on the David Montgomery touchdown run. I don't know if it's just the rest from not playing after the suspension, or if they just don't trust him yet to run the right routes. He did that one that was a bad drop. I mean, the ball was right in his hands. I mean, I know he could hear a linebacker coming across the middle, that if he caught that ball, he was going to get leveled probably, but he still should have caught that ball.
I don't disagree that he should have caught that ball, but I want to get your opinion on what you saw from television, because I still think he should have caught it. But what it looked like to me was that there was a ton of zip on that ball. And I'm not saying you shouldn't catch a fastball, but if you remember, Stafford had that thing for a while where he would chuck it at a guy who wasn't that far away from him, and he didn't have that touch on it. Well, JMO was downfield a little bit, and you probably got to catch it. But I mean, that was a bullet from Goff that still should have been caught. And if he does catch it, you don't know what's going to happen then after that. But that was the only thing. I'm not taking it away from JMO, but I did think I think maybe you know me. I like to give players a little bit of grace.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like you said, though, we're splitting hairs though, because I mean, there's not a whole lot to pick at in this game other than maybe the injury to Mosley and maybe Jonah Jackson, if that turns into something. But
and I will tell you this, as far as Jamison Williams goes, he caught that one pass for -2 yards. He was tackled right away. But the one pass he did catch for 4 yards, there was a missed block assignment right there by a player we're all pretty fond of. And if that block is made, that could have been a much bigger play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that would have been for a first down too. Had it, I think that was a third down play. They ended up punting right after that.
Another thing a lot of people might not be thrilled about were something you already mentioned, which was the yards that Adam Thielen got receiving. But I got to say, I think this might have been somewhat strategic by the Lions. They're like, we're not going to get beat deep over the top on anything. And if you want a handful of yards here and there on some small stuff, we think we can win overall. And so I think if Thielen's going to be the guy you're going to try and beat us with, and we're going to keep everything in front, we'll kind of take it a little bit. And I also want to point out, we're by no means are we perfect on the back half of this defense, but look where we were last year as a defense and compare it to now. I mean, it's such an improvement that, again, we're kind of splitting hairs.
Yeah, and you also have to look at that Mosley was back out again. That Brian Branch didn't play at all. He was inactive. CJ Gardner Johnson's been out for several weeks. I mean, you add those three players into that secondary, and man, that's going to be crazy if they ever get back into full strength. But Jerry Jacobs came in after the Mosley injury and had a very good game. Got that nice pick where he kind of baited Bryce Young into the throw an ill-advised pass. And so, yeah, just another one of those turnovers to help them win the turnover battle.
That's exactly it. Everybody was stepping up when they needed to. I was impressed with Jacobs. I think there was a penalty call on him that I didn't get a good look at the replay, but I got to tell you, I was kind of surprised they called the penalty on that. In general, the secondary played well today.
Yeah, I think it did. The one penalty that they called on him, I'm trying to remember what it was, but yeah, that was a little ticky-tack. He got away with one on Thielen too, where he had his hands all over him, right near the goal line. But Thielen was asking for the flag after the play, not playing it up during the play enough to make it look like it was pass interference.
Well, then let's turn to any turning points or anything that was pivotal. I somewhat jokingly say I think the turning point was the coin toss. Carolina won it, and they elected to receive the ball, which isn't something most teams seem to do these days. Lions forced them out. Then we returned and scored in 3 plays. Then we intercepted the ball and scored again, 14-0 to start. And I mean, in some ways, it was never looked back after that, but then we scored another bunch again with the Reynolds touchdown, then the flea flicker after the Jacobs interception. I mean, it's 28-7. The game felt like it was on cruise control after that. I think that was pivotal.
Yeah, I think it was. I think the thing with taking the ball was that they figured we're big underdogs. We're on the road. We can try to be aggressive and see if we can stay in this game that we're not supposed to be in. So the Lions were 10-point favorites and ended up covering even.
Well, that's not a bad thought, because if we're talking game experience, it was loud again at Ford Field. And maybe that was their thought was, hey, we want to try and get some of this crowd control under control. And it didn't really happen. We got some false starts in the game. I didn't see many ski masks, but the crowd was going pretty crazy. Eminem was in the house. They showed him on the big screen. That pumped the crowd up even more. Did they show him at home?
And that, I know they showed him on Twitter. The Lions had a photo of him up in I think he was in a suite or something like that. But I don't remember the TV broadcast showing Eminem.
Awesome. Yeah, it was great that the crowd was loving it because they were playing one of his songs, and then he was showing up there. And I want to say it was like first quarter or something. And then a little later in the game, they played a little game, and they put a picture of Taylor Lautner up on the screen, and the crowd didn't really react too much. Then they put a picture of Taylor Swift up on the screen, and there were some cheers and there were some jeers, if we will. And then I turned to my buddy, I go, you know what's coming next, man? It's got to be Decker. And Taylor Decker's picture went up third, and man, the place went crazy. It was awesome because Taylor Decker is the guy who last year said, we are not the same old Lions, and they've been proving it ever since then.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Decker looked pretty good coming back. He supposedly still has an ankle injury that is lingering, but I remember one drop back that Goff had where Decker's guy kind of beat him, but Decker kept trailing him and just got like that long arm on him and was able to just get it on his shoulder pad and just steer him around the pocket, even though he was behind the guy, kind of, and was just able to just get enough and alter the guy's trajectory that he went around where Goff was. Goff stood, stepped up in the pocket and completed a pass.
That just speaks to the type of player that Decker is, man. Like, not giving up on a play, even when you don't have all of the play done or developed. And just that little extra is just enough to help make the play be successful. Well, let's move into the part where we talk about major storylines coming out of the game or moving forward. I think the first one I have is the Lions were more banged up than expected coming into this game. I mean, we come off a 10-day break. We figure we're going to be in great shape, but then we find out St. Brown and Gibbs would be out and Branch too. We wondered if that would be a factor. After the game, Coach Campbell talked about the injury situation.
Well, I just think, look, we've been doing it for 3 years, so I guess at some point you get good at it, or get better at it, I should say. I think this is something we talked about. Really, it was after 21. It was, we have to assume we're going to lose a significant amount of our starters every year. Like, that's the assumption. And now what do we do with the guys that we have on this roster, and how do we utilize them, but yet still, have enough to produce against the opponent? And so, look, we're doing a good job of that. These guys are being asked to step up, or they're making plays for us.
So, James, that just again goes to show the depth and is a testament of how well this team is built compared to any Lions team we have seen in recent memory.
Yeah, the depth is something on this team that it's just been impressive so far. It's been tested with injuries and just a lot of injuries. You've seen a lot of teams have, the injury bug, but the Lions hit the Lions as much as any team, and they've withstood it. They're 4-1 now. They've won 3 in a row. They're the talk of the NFL. And in the pregame show, they had several segments on Fox about the Lions. So
Nice.
it was pretty interesting. Yeah.
So I think another storyline that comes out of this is one you've already sort of alluded to, and that's Jamison Williams. We're going to continue to overanalyze him, and he might start falling into that same category that people are comparing him and Jahmyr Gibbs, both, where they want to see these guys be superstars. And so I kind of want to get your take on that. Do you think they've fallen into the same category? One's a rookie, one's a pseudo rookie, if you will. Neither has had a game that's like, 120 yards rushing or 8 catches for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. What do you make of these situation?
Well, Gibbs, they've both dealt with things this season. Gibbs has had the injury. He's got, competition with David Montgomery. David Montgomery has been great this season when he's played. I think Jamison Williams' struggles are a little bit more of his own device. With the suspension, suppose he didn't have a great off season from reports that we've heard. So I think that's kind of his own making a little bit. So he needs to catch back up, and he's gonna have to put that work in practice. And I think he's gonna have to work to regain the trust of Ben Johnson and Jared Goff a little bit.
Well, I also think it's almost a little bit tougher for both of these guys to earn it because of the fact that this is a good team. Like, there's other players on this team that are making plays. And so it's not like they are on a bad franchise where they're just going to continually feed these guys the ball no matter what. The one thing that does encourage me about Jamison Williams is the way he blocks. And everyone's like, why do you care about how well a wide receiver blocks? Well, we know a lot of talented wide receivers who take plays off, who don't do this or don't do that. The effort that Jamison Williams has put in on the field, even when the ball's not being thrown to him, talks about the type of team and culture that Dan Campbell, that Brad Holmes have built. So do I want to see Williams become more of a real factor in the passing game? Yes. And hopefully by this 2-game reduced suspension, by the time the Lions go on the road in Baltimore, we're seeing somebody who's actually catching 3 to 5 passes a game for 75 to 80 yards.
Yeah, and if they get that kind of production, I think they'll be pretty happy, especially if the other receivers are healthy. They got a little bit of production from Marvin Jones this week, even 2 catches for 20 some yards. So that was kind of out of nowhere after he's done almost nothing the first 4 weeks of the season.
Well, that's another guy that they've talked about, how even when he's not getting the ball, you see him doing other things right, as in running the right route to pull the defense with him or doing the blocking. As far as Williams and Gibbs, I'm expecting to see a gradual increased involvement by both of them, and the team grows as the season goes. And so fingers crossed that both of them work out the way we're hoping they will.
Yeah, fingers crossed on that.
The other thing is, the Lions never let Carolina think they had a chance in the second half to win this game. The Lions put this game away as they should have. And Coach Campbell, after the game, talked about the importance of taking care of games like this.
Yeah, it's like I told him, I said, I'm not worried about the opponents that you can see eye to eye, because I believe we can compete with anybody and beat anybody in this league. It's the ones you don't see coming. And, they know exactly who's coming, and they know who's around, and they proved that today.
I love hearing that we think the Lions can compete with anyone, because you and I think that, Coach Campbell thinks that, and I think that was a perfect analysis by him about talking about taking care of business and making sure that this game was never really in doubt.
Yeah, so. And this is what we expected last year, late in the season on Christmas Eve, and that game still haunts me. I was watching that game with family on Christmas Eve, and a bunch of my family are people with links to Wisconsin, so they're Packers fans. And so I was like, oh yeah, the Lions are really good this year. They destroy the Panthers and everything, and then they just came out and just laid that giant turd in that game, and it was so horrible.
This was a much needed bounce back game to not repeat history like that. And finally, actually, when's the last time the Lions blew out a team like this? I mean, I guess it's happened a week or two in a row. It kind of felt that way. But in past years, this is a game where the Lions would kind of just go back and forth, and win by 7 or 10 points and not just kind of knock the opponent out. We knocked the opponent out.
Yeah, and just like you said, they just seemed in control the whole game. It was nice to see a game that just really never really seriously seemed to be in doubt. From the get go, they established themselves. The defense established itself. The offense established itself, and they just let Carolina know that you're not winning this game. The stadium was so loud at one point that the Lions defense was having trouble calling plays.
That was over on the goal line when Carolina was backed up, because I remember watching it. It got super loud at that point, and then you saw them running back and forth as they were trying to do it, because we were hoping to get a safety on Carolina at that point. And oh my gosh, we were like inches away from a safety when that intentional grounding was called. But that place got super loud. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the defensive players were having to walk up to each other and kind of relay what the play call was and everything, and they couldn't hear each other. They had to go helmet to helmet almost to be able to tell the guy next to him what they were doing.
Well, James, the Lions moved to 4-1. That means we keep our lead in first place of the NFC North.
Yeah, and now everybody just roots for the Las Vegas Raiders, and hopefully the Lions have a 2-game lead in the NFC North after this.
And then moving forward, injuries, we just got to hope that we can get a little bit healthier for that Tampa Bay matchup coming up next week.
Yeah, true. That's another game I think where the Lions should be favored, although Tampa has been a team that's been a lot better than people expected.
And they're coming off a bye, so they have time to be rested and well planned. All right. Well, hey, any final thoughts before we get out of here today?
No, it was just nice to be able to watch a Lions game and not be concerned. Going into pregame, I was, worried about it being a trap game, and they put that fear to bed pretty early.
I got to tell you something else about that fan experience of the game that I forgot to mention. When the Lions went up 42-17, I think it was, you saw the floodgates open. You saw fans leaving early. In the historical reference of the Detroit Lions, usually when fans are leaving early from a game, it's for the other reason, not for this reason. And this was different. I know some people are like, you should never leave early, and a lot of people did. But, man, it's a different feeling. They've just won 3 games in a row.
Yeah, you could, even on TV, you could sense how into it the crowd was. And just, I don't know, it's hard to say. Just being in the stadium, how crazy was it?
It was loud. It was crazy. It was exciting. People around me giving high fives, yelling, also because it wasn't a boring game. It was a game that had excitement due to the play calling, due to the plays being made, and knowing that we have a real home field advantage in Detroit at Ford Field with that crowd now.
Yeah, it certainly seemed like it on TV. And it certainly seemed like the national media, the guys on TV are really coming around to the Detroit Lions and liking what the Lions are doing.
Awesome. Well, on that note, James, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining the show today.
No problem, man. It's always good to talk after a win.
Yes, it is. And that's 3 in a row, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in. You can find all the episodes at notthesameoldlions.com. If you're listening on YouTube, please hit that like and subscribe button. Tell your friends about the show while you're at it, and subscribe regardless of your listening platform. And until next time, stay gritty, my friends.